Now that we have created requirements, we can move to the testing module, and here you can create your folders for your resources. Let's say I create a new folder for my resources by clicking on the folder icon on the top. If I say OK, and it creates a new folder, and I can enter some details for my resources over here. Okay, then you can create new resources by clicking on this new resource, or press Ctrl R together, and here you can give it a name. Let's say my object repository. Okay, and click OK. And that creates a new resource for you. Now we'll move on to creating a test plan. In this case, if you go to the test plan lab module, you can create new test plan, or if you already have a test plan created, usually in a Word document for your testing, you can create a new folder. Let's say test plan, project X, and under that folder you can add your tests. Okay, so by clicking on this new test button, you can add a new test to this test plan. Let's say test 1, click OK, and that creates a new test for your under your test plan. Okay, so as you can see, for every test you have on the right hand side a details tab, you have a design steps, parameters, test configurations, and attachments. You'll be mostly using the details to look at the overview of this test, and you can add design steps to your test case. Adding a new test is nothing but adding test cases. So right here on the test plan, we're actually creating our test cases. So I can give it a better name. Let's say log in to the application. That's one test case. And I'll create another test case. Let's say I'll name it as create an order for total of $1,000. Okay, so I have two test cases under my test plan for project X, assuming project X is a new project for our portal for creating orders for e-commerce electronic items. So I have two test cases. For each of my test case or test, I can add steps. If I, on the right hand side, if you click on design steps module and click on new step, that will create a new step for you. You can put the step details here. For example, enter user ID and password. That's your description and the expected result. Just like if you do not know how to write a test case, look at our QA fundamental course. On the expected result, you will put your expected result. In this case, user should be logged in successfully, and click OK. You can see that's the first step. Step 1, enter user ID and password. Okay, and actually I'll just modify the expected result. I'll say user should be able to enter, and on step 2 will be click on login, and here user should be able to log in successfully. So I have two steps for my test case login to the application. Step 1, enter user ID and password. user should be able to enter step 2, click on login, and expected result is user should be able to log in successfully. That's how you can add your test case under a test plan and enter test steps for your test cases. Okay, you can modify the serial, renumber the steps. You can change around which step to put. I can drag and drop my step 1 to be my step 2, and this is how it's very flexible. If you missed one step and you like to enter that step sometime later, or if there is a change in your application, a new step was added, you can easily do that on HP ALM. The same way you can add test steps for your second test cases. In this case, I'll just leave it blank. Now, if we want to execute the test cases, and again, this is a test management tool, there is no automation, you have to manually execute your test cases. If we go to test lab, that is where we will need to execute our test cases. But before execution, always you will have to have a test set created. Okay, in this case, I'll create a new folder and I'll name it as Project X Test Execution. Okay, and under that Project X Execution Test Set, I will create a new test set. Test set is nothing but a combination of a bunch of test cases. Means how many test cases or which test cases you like to execute, you will put all of them in a test set. You don't have to recreate your test cases. You can simply upload your test cases created in test plan and add them into your test set. Okay, so what I mean is I created a new folder, and if I click on new test set under that folder, I can now create a new test set. Let's say this is my first execution set. I mean, this is the first time I'm executing my test cases. Okay, you can call it regression test set, whatever you want. So under that test set, now you can add your test cases. On the right hand side, okay, you can see all the number of you can see a flow where you have your test plan tree, and you can see from the test plan, okay, I'll go back to our test plan module. So we created test plan project X and 2 test cases, and on test lab you are able to see the test plan tree, and we can see the test plan project X we created. If we expand it, we can see the 2 test cases, okay, that we created. We can simply, let's say in this test set, we want to execute both of these test cases as part of the test execution set. So you will select the test cases that you want to execute. Okay, you can double click or select and then click on this add test arrow sign, and that will add your test. Okay, so you can see create an order, and the same thing for the second one. Select and add. Looks like I added the first one actually twice, so I'll just delete it. Okay, so now I have 2 test cases in my test set named first execution set. Now I can simply execute these test cases, okay, by simply clicking on run test set, or you can also run them individually. If you click run, you can run them individually. You can also click on run test set. Let's say manual run. Click OK. And now you can click on begin run, and that will ask you to start executing your test cases. In this case, we don't have any test step added for this test. As you can see, the first test we are running, create an order for total 1000. On the top of the window you can see. So on each step you can select pass and fail. You can also put the execution result over here and click on stop and run, and that will end the test execution. Okay. Now if you click on begin run, now we are going to the second test case, which is log into the application. If you click on that, now you can get a better picture because now we have actual test steps added for this test case, log into the application. So step 1, what's the status? Let's say we are successfully able to enter a user ID and the password. So we'll just, for each step, I'll say this one was passed. So we are manually executing the test case, and the point of using ALM is to better organize the test cases and test plan. Step 2 was also passed. Okay. And I'll click on, and you can see the whole test case is now a pass because all steps actually passed. Click on end run, and that's it. So we have successfully executed our test set. You can see this test case actually passed, and the first one actually doesn't have any result because we did not complete the test run. This is how you can create test cases, test plans, and on the test lab you can execute your test set or test cases manually using HP ALM.